In behalf of the board of our German-Palestinian Society, I welcome you all on our extraordinary Zoom meeting. We are particularly pleased and honored to welcome my friend, Dr. Mustafa Bargouthi, to be our guest at this meeting, knowing that you have several other appointments, especially in these days. Daily, I follow up your statements, and I know that you are one of the most diligent and sought politicians in the regional and in the international media services, dear Mustafa. In addition, we are very pleased that you will be one of our lecturers next June on our annual conference in Höxter, and we are very glad to meet you there. We are now in the fasting month of Ramadan, so Ramadan Kareem to you and to all Muslim people all over the world, and especially in Palestine, but also in the middle of the Easter celebrations. Happy Easter and peace for Palestine. Last Friday, dear Dr. Mustafa, you were prevented from continuing your travel from Ramallah to Jerusalem at checkpoint Kalandia. Nevertheless, you arrived at the Al-Aqsa Mosque via other ways and did your service there as doctor. Last night and today in the very early morning, Israeli armed forces stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque, drove worshippers out of the mosque, arrested others, and caused an unfinished fight. What does the Israeli government intend behaving this unacceptable manner?
Thank you. Can I speak?
Yes, please.
Okay, first of all, it's very nice to meet all of you. I can see many faces that I know before, and it's very nice to meet all of you. And thank you for hosting me today. And happy Ramadan to Muslims, and happy Easter to Christians. And I hope we're going to have better days in the coming weeks and months. You asked me about why did they do this. In my opinion, there are several reasons, but on top of them is the fact that the police today is under the control of a fascist called Ben-Gvir. I use the word fascist liberally because the Israeli ministers, including Smotrich, described himself openly as he said that he described himself as a fascist homophobe. And Ben-Gvir himself was not allowed to serve in the Israeli army when he was 18 years old because of his extreme positions. He was a follower of Kahana movement, which was classified in Israel as a terrorist organization, as well as in the United States. This man is now the Minister of Internal Security, in charge of police, in charge of border police, in charge of what happens in Al-Aqsa Mosque, and in charge of what happens in prisons, where Palestinian prisoners are kept. The attack this morning was very dangerous, because many people who were worshipping inside the mosque were attacked during the prayers. And the soldiers went inside the mosque in their boots, attacked Palestinian worshippers, beat them badly. And I'm sure many of you have seen the videos of how people were beaten, attacked women, men, children, elderly people, throw at them tear gas bombs and stun grenades. and then handcuffed in the mosque and arrested 400 people and took them to jail. I believe they did that because there is an intentional attack constantly from the Israeli side to change the nature of the situation in the Aqsa Mosque, which, as you know, is the second holiest place for Muslims in the world. These groups are fanatic groups representing Jewish fundamentalism, who believe that they should replace the Aqsa Mosque with a Jewish temple. And they are very dangerous. They try to change the nature inside the mosque, inside the area of the mosque, so that there will be division like between Muslim and Jewish people, although Jewish people have their site where they pray freely and nobody interferes in that, on the other side of the wall, of course. And so the attack was designed, in my opinion, it was designed, premeditated, and as one of the efforts to change the situation inside the mosque. But another reason, in my opinion, is because of the fact that last Friday, although, as you said, they prevented us from reaching Jerusalem, and there were many roadblocks and many obstacles, nevertheless, 250,000 Palestinians managed to cross and reach the mosque. It was an amazing scene. I was so impressed and touched by what I saw, because practically Palestinians were all over the city for hours. They established their presence despite all the Israeli military arsenal. And I think the Israeli police was taking revenge from Palestinians because they managed to reach Jerusalem and the Aqsa Mosque despite of all the barriers. Many young people climbed the wall and jumped. Some of them got injured in the process to bypass the Israeli military checkpoints, which were trying to turn people away. One example of what they did was also last Friday at night, at midnight, when the soldiers attacked a young woman who was leaving the mosque. And then when a Palestinian doctor who carries Israeli citizenship tried to protect her from the beating, they shot him 20 times and killed him. So this is the kind of behavior of the Israeli police and Israeli army. They feel impunitive. They feel they are above the law. They feel that they are not accountable. And they very much abuse the situation of double standard that, unfortunately, the international community is using when it comes to Palestinian issues.
Thank you very much. The creation of this so-called National Guard is no more a provocation, but it is a threat. It is a threat because any time Palestinians reject this, it would be an argument for further forces and for further damages to be explained within our media that they are defending themselves. I am right with this analysis.
Yes, and let me say that Ben-Gvir and his extreme group has been demanding that he will be assigned a private army. And he wants to use this private army to attack Palestinians both inside Israel itself in 1948 areas, as well as in the West Bank. And he wants to make it an army of settlers. He actually called all settlers to carry their guns and wander around. And now he wants this private army. And as you know, the fascist group in this Israeli government is trying to change the judiciary system in Israel, which has created a big split inside Israel itself. And as one result of that was lots of demonstrations. And Netanyahu was forced to postpone the changes of the judiciary system, which will take away the independence of the judiciary system and to convince Ben-Gvir to agree with that, Ben-Gvir demanded that the government will immediately approve this private army for himself. And that's exactly what happened. And Netanyahu ordered a cut from the budget of every ministry in Israel, including health ministry, education ministry, to make a cut by 2% to provide 400 million to create this new army that will be used by Ben-Gvir specifically to attack Palestinians. I want to link that with what Smotrich said when he called for the erasing of Huwara, a Palestinian city.
Yes.
And he said then, this should not be done by settlers themselves, but by the government. As a matter of fact, I think the formation of this private, it's not an army, it's actually a militia, some kind of fascist militia. The formation of that is probably purposefully directed at exactly what Smotrich called for, which is erasing certain Palestinian communities and conducting similar ethnic cleansing to what happened in 1948. Let me say here, what we face as Palestinians is unprecedented. This is probably the most dangerous time for Palestinians since 1948. We do have now a government that is a coalition between the extreme nationalists represented by Netanyahu, a coalition of that group with Jewish religious extreme fundamentalists represented by Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. It's a very dangerous development. The declared program of the government is very clear. They don't hide it. They say in their official statement, no place for Palestinian state. West Bank must be annexed to Israel. That settlements should be spread all over the West Bank. And that the land of Palestine, which they call Eretz Israel, is exclusive for Jewish people, and the right of the self-determination in the historic Palestine is only for Jewish people. Smotrich, the second most important man in this government, because he's the Minister of Finance, and also he is a minister in the Ministry of Defense in charge of the West Bank. So practically he's the military governor of the West Bank for Palestinians and a civil administrator for Israeli Jewish people. He said very clearly, he said we should fill the West Bank with settlers and settlements so that Palestinians would lose any hope of having a state of their own. And then Palestinians will be left to choose between one of three choices: either to immigrate and leave, or accept a life of subjugation to the Israeli control, or die, as he said. Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, did not negate or deny any of these or condemn any of these statements by both Ben-Gvir and Smotrich.
Thank you again, Dr. Barghouthi. We noticed these policies since many years, but it's the first time that a government writes down what will happen. So we have it exactly to be read everywhere. Nobody can neglect it anymore. Even the international policies and governments can read the statements of this government. It's no more propaganda. It is a fact that they want the whole land and even more, They demand that there are no Palestinians. There is no mean for any remain of Palestinians in the land. So it is now a very, very, very red line what we are facing.
Exactly. And in addition to what I described to you, let me tell you that when there was a meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh between Israelis and Arab countries and Palestinians, trying to calm down the situation, Smotrich was making a speech in France in which he said, there is no Palestinian people, that the Palestinian people are an invention which was created during the last 100 years, and that there are no Palestinians. When he said that, he was standing behind the map of Great Israel, which he believes in. And that map included not only the whole of Palestine, including the West Bank and Gaza, but also the whole of Jordan, big parts of Saudi Arabia, and Syria. This is the kind of mentality we are dealing with. And let me say here that the most unfortunate thing, and I have to be frank with you, is that it's not just this Israeli fascist government that is taking terrible stance, but even the Israeli opposition, the Zionist opposition, is not really differing with the government on the Palestinian issue. Let me remind you that even the previous government killed 224 Palestinians last year, the highest number of Palestinians killed by Israelis since 2005. Of course, this government is killing even more, 95 people since the beginning of the year, including 17 children. But the Israeli opposition, the Zionist opposition, does not differ with them. And that's why when this government tried to pass a law in the Knesset trying to take away citizenship from Palestinians who are accused of resistance, this law was supported also by Israeli opposition. So that is the dilemma, is that what you have here is a very serious problem. And that's why when Smotrich said there are no Palestinians, he wasn't being unique. The first person who said the same thing was Golda Meir, at the time the Labour Prime Minister in Israel, who said in the 70s, there are no Palestinian people, it's an invention. So we are dealing here not just with the Israeli government, but with a dangerous Zionist ideology that denies even the presence of the Palestinian people.
Yes. The new government and the problems in Israel against their own democracy is a problem here in Germany, in Europe, and in America as well. But it covers the main problem of the Palestinians. So everybody speaks about the anti-democratic means, but neglect actually the theme of the Palestinians. So we have to consider this as Palestinians aboard and take in consideration that we have to take our part and influence people and politicians.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, it is true that there is a big turmoil inside Israel and a big split because they are trying to destroy even internal Israeli democracy.
Yes.
I use the word democracy with some reservation because it's democracy for Jewish Israelis only. It's not democracy for Palestinians as well, even if they carry Israeli citizenship. There is a profound system of discrimination, which I call a system of apartheid. And I use the word apartheid because apartheid means two systems of laws for two people living in the same area.
Yes.
And that's exactly what we have. But the most unfortunate thing is that many Israelis don't realize that what is happening now internally in Israel is the result. As many, by the way, previous Israeli leaders warned against, it is the result of the continuation of keeping the occupation. After 55 years of military occupation of the West Bank, two things have happened. First of all, occupation has evolved into a system of apartheid, and apartheid produced fascist groups like Smotrich and Ben Gvir, who are now even attacking Israeli democracy itself.
Yes.
But the other factor is that the continuation of occupation has produced settlers. And settlers who were only 121,000 in 1993 when Oslo Agreement was signed. And by the way, that was the biggest mistake of the Palestinian leadership, who agreed to sign an agreement without demanding complete and total freeze of settlement activities. The 121,000 settlers became today 750,000. These 750,000 are now a very powerful political force in Israel. They have 15 members in the Knesset. They have many ministers, including Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, who are themselves settlers. And these are the guys who are now trying to change the system from within. So in a way, the Israeli system is now a victim of its own doing, the victim of its creation of settlements, and the victim of continuing occupation for such a long time.
Well, you said in the beginning that Israel doesn't care of any means in international law, or they believe only on their own force and weapon. The American president is very, very angry about Netanyahu and his doing. As we know, he didn't invite him to visit the States until now. Netanyahu and the minister were here in Germany. Just to let you know, and you know it, of course. In contrary to the German media, gradually the media, the press, do criticize Israel and inform much more about the oppression of Palestinians. But still now the German policy sticks on its last vision, defend Israel with all means. We reject as a German-Palestinian organization here in Germany, of course, the statements of the government, German government, that there are still common values between the two countries. I don't agree, we don't agree with this statement at all, because there are no values anymore between the two countries.
I agree with you, and we try to explain that to German officials. The last one I met here was the Vice Chancellor who was visiting Palestine and the Minister of Economics. And we had a long debate, and I really presented him with maps and figures and pictures. And I think it left an impact on him. But the overall policy, unfortunately, is still very biased to Israel, afraid of criticizing Israel, although the facts are very clear. I think if you go and visit the foreign ministry, the employees there have full information about everything that is happening here. The problem is the political will from the leaders of political parties in Germany, and the fact that the German establishment allows itself to be continuously compromised by the Israeli side. And I think they are taking advantage of history, although we all know that we as Palestinians were always against oppression of Jewish people. I mean, whether in the Holocaust or during anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism has nothing to do with us. Anti-Semitism is a European phenomenon.
Yes.
And we as Palestinians are Semites as well, by the way. I mean, I think many people forget that. But when Israel tries to represent the situation as if any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism, that is exactly what even the previous Prime Minister of Israel, Lapid, said, that distinguishing Israel when it comes from other countries in terms of what are the standards, he said that distinguishing Israel and making it different from other countries is the anti-Semitism. In other words, if Israel does wrong, it should be criticized. I think that's exactly what Lapid said. He's the ex-prime minister of Israel. So I believe here there is a long way to go, but the most important thing is to present the facts and present the reality and inform the people. And I think today there is an opportunity, unprecedented opportunity, because of the extremism of this Israeli government, because of the nature of fascist people like Netanyahu and like Smotrich and Ben Gvir in alliance with Netanyahu. And that provides a very good opportunity to show the truth to the German public about the reality of what we live in. Yep. Nothing from what I said, as I told you before in our meetings, is against Jewish people or Israeli people as people. It's against the system of apartheid. It's against extremism. It's against the occupation. And I think when we struggle for the freedom of Palestinian people, we are struggling for the freedom of everybody, including the Israelis. Of course. Because they will not be free from this situation as long as we are not free. And the unfortunate thing is that while the whole world keeps talking about two-state solution and allowing Israel to continue with settlements without any punitive acts, without sanctioning them, the result is the killing of the two-state solution, which means we will be left only with one option, which is one democratic state. Of course. Today, we live in a reality of one apartheid state. Yes. And I say we cannot accept this enslavement. And the only alternative to one apartheid state is a one democratic state.
The double standards are very evident when we compare, and we don't want to go further in discussion what happens in Ukraine and in Palestine against Russia and what is happening against Israel. Nothing. But my last two questions are considering the role of the youth in Palestine and the future of the Palestinian Authority.
Well, the youth in Palestine are amazing. They are so courageous, so full of energy, and they are even much more courageous maybe than the previous generations. They are, of course, frustrated, yes, disappointed. They suffer from very difficult conditions, not only of occupation, of unemployment, of poor conditions, but also of lack of they suffer, as you know, as from the lack of perspective. They don't see a clear future. And that is the worst thing for any young person. That's why I think many of them are very angry. But on the other hand, it is amazing that these young people are being so heroic, so insistent on struggling for freedom. You can see that in Jerusalem, you can see it in Ramallah, you can see it in Gaza, you can see it everywhere. And this younger generation is as committed as all other Palestinians were. I would even say they are more committed to achieving freedom than the previous generations. And I do believe that they are, of course, the younger generation is different from our generation. Their relationship to technology is very different. Their use of social media, probably the German young people also, is the same thing. And sometimes we don't understand them. We don't understand the way they do their work. But they're really very good. And I think I am so hopeful about this young generation in Palestine, especially those who are very innovative and very creative. I mean, yesterday I was talking to Daniel Barenboim, who probably you know very well, and he was telling me about this young Palestinian from Hebron who is studying in the academy in Berlin, studying music, and he said he's so amazing. He will become one of the world pianists. Wow. And imagine, I mean, there is another guy who is whom I know since he was a child, when he started attending the school here, the music school that we have here, and then he went to the academy, and now he's on his way to become, he's from Nazareth, and he's on his way to become one of the most famous, probably, musicians in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great generation, full of energy and full of hope.
Yes.
And what I feel sorry about is really the fact that they don't have the equal opportunities that other people have. And what I feel very sorry about is the so many young people who die, unfortunately, because of this situation, without reaching and fulfilling their full
Aims. Yep.
impact and their full ability. Regarding your question about the Palestinian Authority future, I don't know what will happen to the Palestinian Authority, but I know that the Palestinian Authority is doing so many mistakes. And the biggest mistake the Palestinian Authority has done is not making enough efforts to end the internal division in Palestine. And the second largest, and probably maybe even a bigger mistake, was the cancellation of elections in 2021. We don't have democratic internal reform. We don't have an independent judiciary system. All the powers are in the hands of a small number of people, whether you talk about judiciary, legislative, or executive powers. But they are now an authority really without much power. They have become an authority without authority, an authority under military occupation of Israel. And Israel plays games with them. They restrict their abilities from one side, and then they use their weaknesses to pressure them. So if you ask me about the future of the PA, it depends on whether they will be able to change their behavior and accept that what we need is a unified leadership, a democratic reform, allowing the Palestinian public to choose their leaders freely and democratically, without any pressure and without any intervention from outside.
Yeah. In your statements, you always write and speak about gathering all Palestinians together or parties. And I know that you mean it very, very, very well. It's actually the best way to be able to handle this problem. Otherwise, Israel will divide the people into 2 or 3 or 4 parts, and Palestine will never be one-minded. So I know what you mean, Dr. Barghouthi, and I hope that your influence will be greater in Palestine, and we need more people like you.
Thank you.
Thank you for these statements, and I give now to go to Ursula to let some questions from the audience.
Thank you, Mr. Barghouthi, that you have time right now to answer some questions. I will start with one question from Tony Jansen. You said, Dr. Barghouthi, that the attack on the Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem today was intended to change the situation on the site of the mosque. If I got it right, could you please elaborate on that? Thank you.
Look, Jerusalem is a place of 3 religions, and it has some of the most sacred places for all the 3 religions. You have the Aqsa Mosque, which is very holy to all Muslims in the world. You have the Holy Sepulchre Church, and which is also one of the most sacred places for Christians, as well as the church, the Nativity Church in Bethlehem.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the Wailing Wall, or the Western Wall, as they call it, which is a very holy place for Jewish people. I don't see a problem with all the 3 religions reaching out to their sacred places and practicing their faith. The problem is that there is a very dangerous fundamentalist reformist Jewish tendency, which not everybody agree with, that wants to change the nature of the Aqsa Mosque and claims that below the Aqsa Mosque there are the ruins of the old temple of Jewish people, which is not the case. I mean, no historian or there were lots of excavations intensively. None of that was proved. It's a myth. And these guys use this religious myth to say that, first of all, they should share the area with the Muslims and then maybe replace the Muslims. That is the dangerous thing about this activity. In my opinion, in this case, religion is being used by politicians. They are using religious myth to achieve a political goal of annexing East Jerusalem and Judaizing the whole of the West Bank for political purposes. That's exactly the nature of the conflict that is taking place there. And that's why people are very alert to these plans. It's not just a religious issue, it's a national issue. And Palestinians don't look at the situation here as a religious war or a religious fight, although these extremists in Israel are trying to make it look so. It's a national issue. It's an issue of freedom and liberation from colonialism. It's an issue of Palestinian people living under occupation and a system of apartheid, and their country has been colonized, and they are struggling against this colonialism and this racism. That is the nature of the situation, which some Israelis try to change and make it look like a religious fight between two religions.
Thank you. The next question from Dr. Shirheva. Dr. Bargouthi, can you please speak about the response of the Palestinian Authority to this crisis? Does it still control Jenin and Nablus? What is your opinion about the dissolving the Palestinian Authority?
Well, the Palestinian Authority is not in charge of many places. I mean, its authority is very limited to some authority inside the cities, including Jenin and Nablus. But their authority in these areas has diminished largely. According to Oslo Agreement, the PA, the interim arrangements of Oslo said that the PA would be in charge of about 18, security-wise, of 18% of the West Bank, which are the cities mainly. Yeah. But since 2002, when under Sharon, Israeli army re-invaded all the Palestinian cities, practically the Palestinian Authority has authority only when the Israeli army is not there. But the Israeli army keeps coming in Nablus, in Jenin, in Tulkarim, and even in Ramallah. The other day, they were inside the center of Ramallah, and they attacked the Ramallah hospital, which is exactly located in the center of the city. So the Palestinian Authority really does not have security control because of Israel. But more than that, the rest of the country, the area B and C, are divided in 224 small islands. I call them Pantostans, or actually it's better to call them ghetto-stans. Yeah. They are like ghettos, separated from each other by 642 military checkpoints, Israeli illegal settlements, and the wall, which is 3 times as long and twice as high as Berlin Wall used to be. So practically the Palestinian Authority, for instance, they cannot move their security troops from Ramallah to Nablus without Israeli permission, because they will pass through an area which is under Israeli control. More important, 62% of the West Bank is called Area C, where the Palestinian Authority is not allowed to have security control or even civil control, which means that we cannot build in these areas a clinic, a school, a kindergarten, a house without Israeli permission. And this new Israeli government decided that they will not allow any construction of any Palestinian structure in 62% of the West Bank, devoting it completely to settlement expansion. And that is the nature of the situation today. For instance, Ministry of Health in Palestine does not provide health care to people in Area C. We, as a non-governmental organization called Palestinian Medical Relief Society, we organize 14 mobile clinics to go and visit these areas, which are completely neglected. I'm talking about almost 200 communities without any health services, if it wasn't for our mobile clinics. And sustaining these clinics is a big problem constantly, because it's not easy to get financial support to keep them going. But these are examples. Now you ask me, what do I think about dissolving the Palestinian Authority? What do we mean by dissolving the Palestinian Authority? During the long years of occupation, when there was no Palestinian Authority, we tried ourselves to build a health system and an educational system, a social solidarity system outside the Israeli control. That's why, for instance, 45 years ago, medical relief was established without Israeli permission. And it did not get a license till 2000 from the Palestinian Authority. So we already built health system. We have more than 19 universities that are a big number of schools that are not controlled by Israel. Why would we give it back to the Israeli control? I think when we speak about dissolving the Palestinian Authority, we should ask the question, what do we mean by that? I am fully and 100% in support of dissolving the security structure, the security coordination structure with Israel. So, but I am not for giving back the control of our health or educational system to the Israeli oppressive system. That's why I think we should differentiate, and that's why the result should be restructuring the duty of the Palestinian Authority, taking it away from Israeli control when it comes to security issues, and making it much more servant of its own people rather than a cooperating structure with the Israeli side.
The next question from Sophie Asmus. The reason for the last night's event is, from my opinion, also a provocation to get into another war with Hamas in Gaza. The Israeli government is weakened because of the mass protest, and war creates fear, and fear unites people again. War helped in the past always to strengthen the Israel government.
I agree with that. I think one of the ways for this government to escape the internal division and the embarrassing situation it is in is to create another war with Palestinians or create a big conflict with Palestinians. And so it is not unusual for the Israeli government to try to deflect its internal problems into a fight with the Palestinian side, including the possibility of another war on Israel, on Gaza. Smotrich just today said there should be a war on Gaza. He said there should be reoccupation of all Palestinian cities like was done in 2002, starting with Nablus and Jenin.
Next question from Marianne and Osama. What about the Arab governments facing this attack during Ramadan?
Most Arab governments, actually all Arab governments, condemned Israel for what it has done, including even governments that normalized relations with Israel. But unfortunately, condemnation means nothing. In my opinion, Netanyahu tried very much to use normalizing relationship with Israel, with Arab governments to hide the issue of Palestine and to marginalize the Palestinian question. And that's why we say that the Arab countries have to be in the avant-garde in demanding sanctioning this government rather than normalizing relationship with it. And there is a lot of public pressure in that regard. I mean, during the Mondial in Qatar, the World Cup, it was so impressive to see how the Arab people reacted to the situation in Palestine, including the Moroccan team and the Saudi team and others who were carrying the Palestinian flag everywhere. I do believe that there is a lot of pressure on Arab governments to take stronger stand against Israeli measures. And I think that Netanyahu plan to marginalize the Palestinian issue through normalization has failed. Not only because of the pressure of the people of these countries on their governments, but most importantly, recently, because of the normalization of relationship between Iran and Saudi Arabia. This has changed dramatically the geopolitical situation, and you can feel that in many aspects and in many ways. So I guess we're not satisfied with the positions of the Arab governments. We think they can do much more. But I think we see positive developments in these areas.
Thank you. The last question comes from Helmut Sutur. My question relates to the possibilities for action here in Germany. Our problem is not a lack of information. Our problem is a lack of collective action built into a strategy. One aspect of this problem is a division between young and old. In this Zoom meeting, pretty much only older people are present. This state of affairs would also have to be overcome in order to achieve actionability.
Yep.
I totally agree with you. I think what we miss here is, I mean, regardless of your age, to me, you are still young people, but we have to find ways of reaching out to the younger generation, because I believe that there is a big gap here, and you will not be able to reach the younger generation yourself. The important thing is to find young people who can talk to young people. That's what we try to do here as well, from peer-to-peer education in a way, and peer-to-peer information. And I think there is a great gap here. We notice it even, let me give you one example. We have a long and strong relationship with SPD, the party SPD, the German SPD. But we notice that the older generation in the SPD is much more understanding of the Palestinian issue than the younger generation. We face a lot of problems with the people in the youth part of that party, for example. So that means there is a problem we have to face. And that's why I think one has definitely to find a way of reaching out to younger generation. On the other hand, I think also it is shameful that sometimes the Israeli lobby is so powerful now in Germany that it can prevent events of people who are in solidarity with Palestine, as has happened recently with a musician. And you remember it happened to a meeting we were organizing with the church groups a few years ago, when we hardly could find a place in Berlin. So it is very strange, and that needs to be addressed. Another thing is to talk to parliamentarians. I think it is unacceptable. The decision of the German parliament about BDS is a total suppression of freedom of belief and freedom of expression. And I think some work has to be done in that direction. But as a society, you know better than me how you should do your job. But I want to suggest one thing only specifically, is to direct your attention to the younger members of the German parliament, the young people in the German parliament from all parties. I think it's a very important and useful step to do.
But here's one more question from Anja and Martin. Have you any idea of what we could do in Germany against the very patchy journalistic reporting about all terrible events and development against the Palestinian people?
As I said, I think you know better than me, but I would emphasize 3 or 4 aspects. First of all, bringing the right narrative to the German public. Second, working with politicians from local level to the national level, especially, again, the younger politicians. I think that is very important work. Third, writing in the media. Social media is very effective today. And I think writing and explaining and exposing is very powerful, especially if you use methods like video presentations and PowerPoint presentations. They are much more effective than just writing. And so reaching out to the media is very good. One very good suggestion would be bring people in here. The best experience, the best way of convincing people is to bring them to Palestine. I meet almost on usual days, I meet 2 to 3 groups every week, from students in the United States to journalists and media people from Europe. Believe me, each encounter, even if it doesn't last more than an hour, because we make a presentation to them with facts, figures, videos, pictures, maps, it always makes a huge difference. And what makes even bigger difference if we manage to have them on a field trip to Hebron, for instance, to see with their own eyes the system of apartheid graphically. Recently, I had a visit of one of the ministers from Luxembourg, and he didn't have much knowledge about anything. And we just went to Hebron. 3 hours in Hebron changed him dramatically, completely. The prime minister here called me later and told me, what did you do to this man? I mean, he don't stop talking about apartheid. So I think I don't know if your association can do that, but one of the suggestions I would say is to bring young politicians or young media people on a tour visit to Palestine. This would make a huge difference.
And one thing from Thorsten Eiler's question, are there attempts to strengthen the cooperation between Palestinians in Israel proper who hold the Israeli nationality and Palestinians of the occupied territories?
Yes, we have friends on the Israeli side all the time. We meet with them, not only Palestinians who are Israeli citizens, but also Jewish people. And some of them are in total solidarity with Palestine. And we work a lot with these groups like B'Tselem, Yesh Gevul, Gosh Shalom, Women in Black. I'm not disappointed with these groups because they are really good. I'm disappointed with the Zionist parties in Israel, even those who claim that they are leftist, I mean, like Labor or Meretz. I don't think they have anything to do with left. Unfortunately, their positions have been very weak and they pay the price. Meretz did not get a single seat in the last elections. And Labor Party, which used to govern Israel, has only 4 seats. So the hope is not in these parties. I think the hope is in the other younger generation of those who refuse to serve in the Israeli army, those who are in solidarity with Palestinians, and those who engage in human rights activities. And one more thing, I think we are making huge progress with Jewish communities in the diaspora, especially in the United States. A huge number of young Jewish people in the United States are changing their mind and changing their positions, and they are ashamed of the fact that Israel has created apartheid here. I think many of them are already organizing even in solidarity with Palestinians. And trying to, I mean, there were so many demonstrations in the States against this Israeli government by Jewish people. When Netanyahu visited France, also there was a demonstration against him. So not only by pro-Palestinians, but also by Jewish Israelis. So I think there's great hope in building these links with these groups. And if we speak about a future of one state, one democratic state with equality, with national equality and civil equality, then we do have to work together.
Yes, I think Sophie writes, I would recommend that this group should be more active on social media to reach out a younger audience for these online calls. Yes, we will do it. We do our best. Nazi?
Yeah, is that Okay. Dear Dr. Barghouthi, thank you for your statements. Just few remarks. The Palestinian problem is one of the oldest ones. Youth have new problems and new fields where they react and do their policy. Second, I speak with many politicians of parties on local and even in the Bundestag. When I speak to them individually, from eye to eye, they do accept our opinion, but nobody is or has the courage to state it outside. Nobody. In the German society, there is a great acceptance of accepting a Palestinian state. More than 70% agree that the Palestinians should have their own state. But the German government refuses this. We know about the relationship between Germans and Jews. What we do not accept is that this responsibility is given to a state. And this is our main issue here in Germany. Thank you very much. And I hope we can do something to serve the Palestinian people.
So thank you so much for everything you are doing. I really appreciate what you do. And people like yourself give us a lot of courage. You inspire us to continue our struggle to achieve our freedom one day, inshallah.
Thank you very much. And it is now 1 hour, no more, because you have other things to do. Ramadan Kareem. And we see you later in Germany in June.